Recall that we set up our par deployment data product before we went in the field. And in our protocol folder, we created a field folder, and that field folder contains our protocol or our checklist for what we're going to do in the field in order to deploy the data logger and then go and recover the data logger and download the data. And as part of that, we went ahead and created some folders in the input that we knew we wanted to fill in as part of our protocol. And now let's say we've gone into the field and we now have data in our data logger downloads folder that was empty before we went in the field, but now we've gone in the field, we've downloaded the data, and here's our two data files. The data file convention that we chose for these is going to be the serial number of the Campbell data logger, followed by the serial number of the PAR sensor, and then finally the date of the deployment. And in this case, we've actually been out twice following our protocol over a season, starting on March 4th as the first deployment, and then we went and downloaded data and redeployed on July 13th of 2021. So now that we have some data, we're ready to start automating the part of the workflow that deals with that data. And that means we're going to start using R. So in our protocol, as we have before, I need to bring up R. And I want to set up my pipeline so I'm consistently in the right working directory. So I'm going to create a new R project in the protocol folder. I need to go to an existing directory because the directory that I want to be where my RStudio project file already exists. I'm going to browse for where to put that. And I'm going to bring up, oh, that's the wrong folder. There we go. I'm going to bring up this protocol folder path for my data product. Just copy it and paste it in here. It's quicker than trying to navigate to it, and then create a project. So again, now I have an R project file here, and as I have before, I like to call these RStudio project files just because I know these are specific to RStudio, and therefore I want to look for that name when I'm looking for this file. The name of the project file doesn't really matter to R. You can call this whatever you want. So now if I open up R using this project file, as we've seen before, I can do a get WD or get working directory function call, and I should be in that protocol folder. Now it's time for a little bit of a wrinkle here, because where I prefer to work from my code in terms of relative paths is not from the protocol folder, but from the root of the data product, this par deployment folder. And that's because a lot of the things that I need to get to are one folder back from the protocol folder. They're in the input, or they're in the incremental, or they're in the product. And to me, it just makes more sense to think about my primary working directory being the root of the data product, as opposed to it being in the protocol of the data product. Now, as it turns out, there is a way to set up RStudio project files such that you can have the project file in the protocol directory, but you can change your working directory to be the root of your data product or the parent of the protocol directory. And the way you do that is to create what's called an RProfile file in your directory where your RStudio project is. So I'm going to create a new file, and in this case, it's actually going to be an R script, because ultimately the RProfile file is an R script, and I really only need to call one function in this R script. I'm going to call set working directory to 2 dots. Now, if you recall, with relative paths, the 2 dots means to go to the parent of the current working directory. So I want to change my working directory to the parent of the current working directory. Now I'm going to save this file. I'm not going to save it as a .r type. I want to save it as a .r profile. Now this is a very special file name. Has to be exactly what it's called, .R lowercase profile. I'm going to save that into the same directory where my RStudio project is. That's in the protocol directory. And the way this works is when you open up RStudio with this R project file, it will look in the same directory for a .R profile, and it will run whatever R code is in that .R profile file before it gives you your R prompt. It does it as part of setting up R, and that will determine what your R environment is like when you open up RStudio using this project file. So just to show you how that works, if I open up RStudio, it'll read this .R profile, it'll run this set working directory. Since my working directory is currently the protocol, that will change the working directory to the parent of the protocol, which is this root directory of my data product, or this PAR deployment directory. So let's convince ourselves that works. I'm going to close RStudio. Here's my file browser in Windows and my .R profile file. I'm going to open up RStudio again using the project file, but this time it's going to look for that .R profile, find it, run that code, and now if I look at my working directory in my R session, get working directory, not set working directory, it's going to tell me I'm in the PAR deployment folder, not the protocol folder, the PAR deployment. And that means all my relative paths need to be from this PAR deployment folder, which just makes more sense to me. So you don't have to do this. It will work either way in terms of whether you prefer to have the protocol directory as your working directory or not. Or you can set it up as the root directory as a working directory. This is the personal preference thing. In either case, you're using relative paths, which is really the important thing for data products being portable.